Normally I'd start by lowering my wheels a bit, but these wheels are sitting kind of low right now. They have quite a ways to go before they actually bottom out. Oh, I should be looking here. Yeah, no. About 12.5 inches of travel. Set my weights for my road wheels. The total physical weight right now is only 4 tons. Physical. So, actually, I might just leave my wheels at 100 kilograms. So, I actually want to start with the ball sockets. There you go. So, actually no, not the ball sockets, axis. We should do that first. Doesn't matter though, because it comes with the constraint. Wait, are these? Okay, all of these are spherical. Okay, good. I hope they're spherical. Okay, now we can do the ball socket. You don't have to do this in PA, by the way, but it's just an XYZ ball socket from the drive wheel to every row wheel, or every wheel. Alright, let's do the other side. Okay, now what? So I'm gonna do that thing I do where I use a hub and put the spring on that instead of putting the spring directly on the wheel. I don't think that actually needs to be that heavy. I normally just use half the road wheel's weight for this. So let's put all of these into the wheels. And again, if you know how to build elastic suspension, you can just do that if you're building a tank along or something. The first thing I want to do is, because this is basically elastic suspension, that I want to fade indoors these so I can not grab the wheel. Okay. And let's move these. Hello? Oh, it's one. Okay. Well. And this is just me trying to be clever because this is just gonna select the last prep I moved. So I can sort of chain move them like that. Now comes the fun part. So I want to access these, the wheels anyway, to the hubs. Okay. Now I want to go ahead and actually create the arm for the suspension. I'm not sure if I ever put this on the paste bin or anywhere, but this E2 basically spawns the ropes for you. So let me go ahead and clean this up a bit to match my tank's base plate. But basically, if you align this with your tank, physically not with some weird alignment angle, align this with your tank, get an advanced entity marker. You don't need to keep this, by the way, it just makes the constraints and then you can save it. So what you want to do is go ahead and link up the entities input to the entity marker, and first link the base plate. What is this? Okay, this is for the wheels, so then link all the wheels. Okay. Go ahead and refresh D2 because of how I coded it, and I will use numpad 2 by default, so you can actually change the binding here to something that makes more sense. 20 ropes created, so 2 times 10 is 20. Now another thing we need is an axis on all these spindles, hubs, so we now have the axis arm maker, which is very similar. I'm going to change this to T and give it the same sort of dimensions. Notice this doesn't have a width, it's just an axis. And I will have to rename these, rewire this, because for one, it's entities on one of the E2s and marker on the other for non-standard. It's not very standardized. So now keep in mind this goes to the hubs. So again, start with the base plate and then just all the hubs. And refresh the expression again. So now if we look at the constraint remover, you can see now we have a bunch of axi. That's it. Right between the two ropes. So if this is a rope, that's a rope. It's kind of hard to see, actually. But the axis right in the middle, so they're like on a hinge. And I guess we can test this, just see what happens. That's very strange. Oh, this is what I did in the E2. Seriously. Okay, I just have to re-axis my wheels to the hubs, but this is not supposed to. This was supposed to be an option, kind of like self-destructive, would get rid of the E2. Oh well. Well, I gotta redo that. Okay, go ahead and save this one. Oh, test before we save it. There we go. So the hub and wheels go together. Let's go ahead and put the elastics on. So the elastics go on the hubs. Actually, we can go ahead and parent the hubs now. So, okay, these don't have no collides on, so that's fine. Whoops. Okay, let me just. Hey, yeah, now let's go ahead and do the elastics. Should have gotten E2 to do this for me or something, but let's just put the elastic perfectly on the other side of where the axis of rotation is. Not that it matters, just as long as it's away from the axis of rotation. That's how you get your leverage with this. And actually I want to make sure these are actually connected. And every other point I want to be linked to the base. And we can go ahead and just throw any old elastic on there. It doesn't matter because I have re-elastic. Very useful tool. Okay, now I'm expecting this to spaz out when I try to put it down, or just pick it up, or just hold it, really. Okay, so far so good. Ah, my return rollers. Okay. Normally I have to put a lot of inertia on this, but I guess not. I'm gonna do it anyway. It's an extra E2 basically, but this one right here just applies inertia to a bunch of entities I give with an entity marker. So, and I want to link the hubs, not the wheels. Okay. And entities. Go here. Go ahead and parent this. No collided. I removed no collide. So it definitely does not need 300. It was less than 1, so I'm just gonna give it 5. And currently it's sitting at 5 inches below the base plate, the wheels. So I want it to sit at negative 0.5, so it takes up about 5 inches. And I still need to parent my return rollers. Let's see where you are. Oh, that's actually perfect. So I believe that was 20,000 spring constant. Now, what's the angle on this? I'm kind of curious. Neutral. Okay, that's very good. And also, my drive. I think I already parented this. Do it again. Try it on an airfield, I guess. And also at this point you can hide the hubs. They don't need to be drawn. Okay, so I guess next up is Drivetrain. Okay, so right now the tank is sitting at 13 tons. And I still need to move over the whole damage model, so let me go ahead and actually do that. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and hide the base plate as well. So what weight are we sitting at now? 18 tons, which is lighter than what I was going for, which is something I rarely ever get to say. So, it's been a while since I touched this E2. Because I've been doing something rather strange, but I will show you how to use this E2 to get a tank up and running. What is this? Not sure what tank I was using that had 40-inch wheels, but it should be 25.5. Yeah. And these are using the custom spherical radius, because I noticed setting tank wheel spherical and S-props, not that these are tank wheels, but these are now for sure, gives them quite a bit more radius, or a bit more size, so there can be some desync there. What's my engine at? I think I'm going to try a 0.25 power final drive. And don't worry about any of this stuff. Brake force. Okay, there should be 1. I'm not sure what tank I used this in last. And we shouldn't have to worry about any of these things. Okay. Let's go ahead and turn on the debug. Why not? Okay, so let's go and wire things that need to be wired. Base plate, engine, main gearbox. This is the speed gearbox. So, alright, let's wire up the gearbox. Left gear. Brake. Oh, that's it. Okay, so this is the gearbox we're actually using. Gear? I didn't know a double differential took a... Okay, that's interesting. Steer rate for sure, because that's how the tank pivots. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Left clutch. Clutch. Right clutch. Right clutch. So that should be it for the gearboxes. Now for the engine. And I think that should be it. So let's see what shift speeds the thing gives me. That seems reasonable for 40 horsepower per ton. I have to make the tank heavier. So let's see. Let me actually make sure the final drive on the double differential is... And I'm using a small one. Oh, hello. Updating music. Okay. Also, the reason I'm using a small double differential, and I don't have my final drive on the main gearbox. Oh, okay. I should put the final drive on the double differential. There we go. So the engine has a torque rating of 1800 Newton meters. It's going to go through this gearbox, and the highest multiplication is in gear 1, 0.1. If you take the reciprocal of that, that's 10. So 1800 times 10 is still going to be less than 20,000. So that's why I can get away with using a small still, even though this doesn't really make sense. But because this gearbox is huge and this gearbox can be tiny. I believe that should be everything. So in theory this should drive, but I feel like that's not going to be the case. Should I? Some strange reason. Cool, let's try it out. And yes, I don't have any wheel latches yet. Ooh, the steering's reversed. Okay, that's interesting. For some reason it doesn't want to steer. Yeah, neutral steering. Neutral steering. So first thing I want to do is... Well, let's just fix the steering for now. And in theory this needs to be switched as well. Now, why don't you work? Quite a bit of friction, which is why it struggles to turn. Can you pivot? Used to be able to use the double differential to neutral steer, but, well, you can't. So, okay, well, that's fine. And this is the wrong version, or the wrong chip. I mean, that was very... I don't know, I thought it'd be harder to get driving, but that's basically it. Now that's turned very slow. And it's very stiff while turning, which is... I mean, I'm just gonna blame the physical materials on that. For that. Normally I set all my wheels to paper. There's reasons you don't want to do that, because your tanks won't be able to climb, like all of my tanks. This should be rubber. Let's see. There we go, it's a quite a bit snappier now. Another thing I like to do with my ACF tanks is you notice this thing spins out quite a bit. Like that. So there's counter steering and sort of like this weird angle steering. And I guess I'll show you how to use the angle steering. It's, well, I have a newer version of this chip, but it's not for necessarily ACF engines. But I'll show you how to use the old version. So AB target. So let's just say 35 degrees a second. And that should be it. Oh yeah, and also, well, there's a lot of stuff here, but primarily you're just interested in the steering. To be fair, I haven't touched these things in a while, so I'm good. What this should do is when you're steering, it should reduce the amount of brake force it gives the tank, depending on how fast you're steering. So for example, I'm just holding D right now, and it's not spinning out. And right now the tank is gear restricted. They're like, it's just hitting the highest gear ratio and yeah, not accelerating any faster. They're not going any faster. I'll say this is pretty still pretty weak for steering. So let me actually increase this to 15 and maybe, yeah, I'll leave that to 15. Still feels very slow. I think what I'll do is I'll increase the angular velocity target. Now let's just say 50. In practice, the tank won't actually steer exactly as fast as you put it. Or the tank won't actually hit the same rate as you give it with the angular velocity target. Which is why that's kind of dumb, the way I put it, or the way I have it working in the E2. Well, I mean, other than the neutral steering not working, which the gearbox just doesn't work, that's fine. Now, actually I need to add a reverse gear. So, let's do 6-speed, inline large. And we'll just change gear 6 to be that. Okay. And I will need to update my chip. There's a chip. There we go. Now we have reverse. Yeah. Still, unfortunately, no pivoting. Save this as, I don't know, ACF. What I've been preferring to do with my tanks, like the last several tanks I've built, is use a different version of the driving chip. This one. Basically turn an ACF engine into a prop engine, and I'll show you how to do that. And the only real reason I'm doing this is because of the differential steering. Even though this actually steers fairly well with the brakes. But I am a sucker for differentials. So active and throttle still go to the same thing. Now, this chip basically, well, you will need something that sets the crankshaft's inertia because you will be using my gearbox. Or this will be using my gearbox. Let me just get rid of some bloat real quick. What this is primarily for, and the reason this has an interval with some brake force and stuff, is to stop the crankshaft from spinning faster than the ACF engine is spinning, because ACF is one way. If something is spinning slower than an ACF engine, it'll apply torque to it and take torque from the engine. If something is spinning faster than the engine's RPM times whatever gear ratio, it will basically ignore it. And that's what the brake is for. It's to sort of artificially slow down the crankshaft when it's spinning too fast. But I'm gonna use ACF gearboxes. Oops. And what do I want the final drive to be? I don't want this to exceed 1000 RPM, so actually 0.25 is fine. So I don't need to change anything there. Now, I'm going to set this in this expression too. And that should be it for this one. And for the crank inertia, I'm just going to try 100 for now. Alright, now I'm going to need that transmission. So I'm just going to rip it off another tank again. Yeah, well, there's been a few changes, but overall it works basically the same. The applied torque transmission. It shouldn't be cheating because the torque that is being used is the same torque that's being used to slow down the crankshaft. You'll also need a crankshaft, and this is a prop. Ooh, actually, that'll link. Okay, fine, good. Give it the same material. And go ahead and axis this. Spins around. And we can go ahead and actually parent this as well. Just as long as we're not removing the constraints. So, I do like to give this some weight, but it actually doesn't need any. I like to have it be 1/10 the weight of the engine. But the strength of this does not come from the weight. So, crank is going to be over here. Now I need to get the axis of rotation of this. So this is going to be about, it really doesn't help that I'm inside this cramp thing. So it's going to be rotating around that up vector. So front is 1, right is 2, and up is 3. So that's going to be the up vector, which is 3. So that's important for the transmission to know which way the thing rotates around. So already 3. The wheels, or the gears I should say, those are spinning around the right axis, and so that's going to be 2, already 2. Okay, that should be it. Let us, I'm not sure why this is called V12. Well, I know why, it's dumb. Just goes to the gearbox. RPM, I believe that just goes to the engine actually. And ratio RPM to, oh, RPM on this version of the drive chip goes to the engine. The raw RPM, or not raw, but like there's a reducer in there somewhere, so it like multiplies your RPM for you. Oh, crank. Let's see. This right gear. You can just wire it directly to your drive sprockets. Base. This is how it puts the reaction torque, like as far as the vehicle reaction torque, because it already puts reaction torque on the crankshaft. And this is a gearbox, so you can just wire it straight to the drive chip. And I should have named it steer rate because now I gotta look for it. There we go. CVT ratio. So, this let's just set some things up in here. This is gonna look very, very different. Well, not very different, but you know. RPM multiplier, this is just gonna be your gear ratio to all intents and purposes, and you do have to set what the power band is. So 2610 to 3330. No. 2610 to 3330. That is a very narrow power band, now I think of it. Gear count, gear wheel size, final ratio. This is not the final drive on the gearbox. This is the final drive on the on this thing. So whatever this is, and we can do 0.9 for now. Transmission type. Let's see. Shift width. This is kind of new. This is like at this point above the relative to the power band max. This is where it'll try and maintain gear. So let's see. I'm gonna leave it at 500. So like 3300 minus 500 is 2800. So it shouldn't downshift till it hits 2800, or something else happens. Like if it downshifts and it's like past red line or something, that's not good. This kind of converts it to. This kind of makes it feel like a actual automatic transmission with a torque converter, but it's just like some smoothing, like easing in the clutch and stuff. I'm just gonna leave that as is. Steering with the differentials, so I'm just gonna leave this stock, and the rest of this should be the same. Okay. What I like to do first is just make sure this ECU, as I called it, actually works. So you can see that crank spinning now. Oh wow. As you can see, this is working marvelously. Oh, what? Okay, that's... Really? Really? Also, I can tell my brake isn't really working. It's supposed to react more to... So basically it's supposed to slow down the Link E RPM, as it's named, to match the engine's RPM, but it's just kind of static, which tells me that it's the wrong way. I know I didn't wire the brakes, but let's try making it negative. Actually, I'm being dumb. Let me just wire the brakes and see. Oh no, I'm not. It's actually impeding my engine. So what if I do this? There we go. See, it's supposed to like hover around. Like, it's not really supposed to do anything until it spins faster than the engine. It's not supposed to always be on, if you get what I mean. So let's try this. Now I can also tell that my engine is, well, my crankshaft has a lot of inertia to it, so I'm just gonna give it less. And likewise the transmission before it explodes. That's better. You're supposed to work. But basically this is how you do pivoting with this transmission. You just designate a gear. I use -1, and I use -1 in the driving chip to signify it's a neutral gear. Or it has a neutral gear. Actually, I should be able to find where it checks for one. Oh, it just assumes. Okay, well, yeah, this chip probably needs some work, but this tank is gonna pivot, and let's just set it to 1.0. And again, that is the final drive of the transmission, the transmission chip. So this chip does handle different as well. And it's backwards. There we go. Wow. Yeah, the steering definitely needs some help. But, oh look, we can pivot now. That's nice. Oh yeah, and the brakes are insanely effective in the transmission. Can use a 100% brake force, right? This is what it looks like. It can pitch the whole tank, but it still can't stop it perfectly. You still need a weld latch. So right now I have difficulty steering, even though the tank is very wide, not that long, at least as far as the road wheels are concerned. And one thing I did add to, in the transmission anyway, to help that, was sort of like accumulators. So there's a straight line accumulator and also a steering accumulator. The straight line accumulator kind of does what gear inertia and sensitivity does, and it can cause your transmission to explode, and by explode I mean just start spazzing. But the steering accumulator doesn't really do that. So I'm going to have it accumulate, let's try 0.35, and this is as a percent, a decimal percent, so 1 is 100% error, and 0 is obviously don't accumulate anything. Now, also important is the decay, because actually having this always accumulate and not reset to 0 causes the vehicle to like steer on its own and stuff like that. So I also like to have this pretty high, so this is basically 25% of what you've accumulated, or 25% of what you have gets discarded, basically. So it should be dumping whatever is being accumulating over time. So let's try something like this. And the steering should be crisper, or more responsive. Not, well, yeah. I mean, still pretty stiff, though that could also be the driving chip. So let's see. So when method is 0, this is actually brake and clutch, but when it's 1, it's actually using the differentials. So this is like an RPM difference between the two wheels, so I'm going to raise this. Let's just say 50, let's just say 50 and 100 for handbrake turning. I need to add weld latches to this. There we go, that's quite a bit better. What in the world? Oh, right. So I'm kind of confused as to why it was still accelerating, and that was because this thing is loud. Let me turn it off. It was still accelerating because this actually goes up to 1.0 in the transmission. Sorry. Yeah, see, I'm just using division, so it's like 1/5, 2/5, 3/5. Very strange, I know, but still 6 gears. But the transmission by default went up to 0.6. But the primary reason why I want to use this transmission and not the ACF gearboxes is because you can do brake clutch with them, but you can't do differential steering, which is just like increasing the speed of one track and slowing the other down, which tends to make the tank handle more like a car. and not lose as much speed in a turn, but you still do lose speed in a turn. There's still a bunch of friction to overcome. I think. I think it's friction anyway. Oh, but I'll show you what I mean with the counter steering. So counter steering works. Let me see. Oh yeah, and this is basically counter steering here is always on, and it works for brake clutch as well as your brake steps. So you can have it take 4 whole cycles to apply and 2 whole cycles to release. This is how I set it up over here. This is for differential steering. This is like the max steer ratio to use when just steering normally or steering using the handbrake. Handbrake, by the way, is its own button now. Or handbrake, it should just be steer harder. So angle mole, you literally just increase and decrease this, and this is always on. So when you're steering, it's on. When you're not steering, it's on. So tank is kind of floaty. I'm going to increase this. Yeah, it's 0.8, sure. There we go. Now it's very tight. That is basically it. Yeah, there's some more things I want to do, like add sounds to this, but the next you should see of this thing is on garysmod.org, but that might not come instantly, so yeah, that's basically it.